Marketer of the Day, number 469. Build a complete marketing system. Think differently, plan your business, focus, and implement with Diane Conklin. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. We're talking with Diane Conklin, and Diane is an internationally known author. She's an entrepreneur, a coach, a consultant, a marketing and business strategist, an implementation strategist, and a speaker. And Diane is a direct response marketing expert, and she specializes in showing business owners how to integrate their online and offline marketing strategies, their media and message to get the maximum results from their marketing dollars. Sounds like fun stuff, so I'm glad to be talking to you, Diane.
Well, thanks. It's my pleasure, and I'm excited to be sharing with your folks.
Well, me too. So is there anything specific that is on your mind lately? Anything that has you fired up in particular?
You got to be careful going there with me. I'll give you a quickie that happened this morning. That's kind of interesting because this is something that's being taught now, and I have a real challenge with it. So, people have been scraping walls for a long time on social media. Nothing new, but it's interesting to me that now people are actually teaching that as a marketing strategy. I got 2 messages this morning I'm very segmented in my life. So I segment out, I have one email address that all of my social media platforms, are attached to. And, so if I get personal messages on there, I know that somebody has scraped my wall for them. And I had 2 messages this morning of people who wanting to do, various things. To be honest, Robert, I don't even know what they wanted, because when I saw the message, I was like, that's not the way to do it. And I actually, for the first time ever, sent a message back to both of them and said, if you'd like to know how to get clients and how to do business the right way instead of spamming people, I would love to talk to you. And of course, the one that responded back took offense. But, my thing is do things right and do things the right way. And when you do that, business will come.
Right. Awesome. And just to get everyone caught up, so when you say that people are scraping walls, you're saying that people out there are maybe running software that goes and scans Facebook and gets a huge list of email addresses, and then they take that huge list that they scraped and they blast just a spam message, hoping that maybe 1 out of 10,000 will be dumb enough to take the bait, right?
Exactly. I'm sorry. I ran right with that. You got me all fired up again. There's software that will do that for you. And what was interesting when I said that in the email this morning, the person came back and said, you were hand selected. I was like, okay.
Yeah, right. Hand selected to push the button. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it really comes down to it. And, you think that you're doing this free thing, and it's really costing you way more than what you know. So many times, free is the most expensive thing that you're doing in your business.
I completely agree. And when you say that, it makes me think of 2 things. One thing is sometimes I'll go on Facebook groups to see, like if I can make some new contacts or see some new problems or good ideas for content, things like that. And I'll always see on, especially internet marketer groups, they'll say things like, well, what's the cheapest web host, or what's the best, webinar service? And there'll be like, a bunch of different responses, and then people will tend to fixate on the one that's maybe $10 a month less, or the one that's free, even if it's a total piece of garbage compared to something that's a little bit of money. They'd rather jump through all these hoops, do all this extra work just to have the freeness. And what that also makes me think of is almost 20 years ago, when I was still a teenager, when I first started marketing online, one of the first things I did was I joined some message boards, some forums, and I went in there kind of sort of trying to backdoor spam, I guess. Like I'd make posts in places saying, hey, can I get a website critique? Here's my website. Or what do you think about the colors on my website? And I totally knew even at the time that I was going in there just trying to worm my way in to get some of that free traffic. And looking back, I mean, I can't believe that I did that. And I see people doing similar things like that, of just like trying to go with the free way, even if the paid way is like a few dollars on like a boosted post or a Facebook ad. They'll put in tons and tons of time on the free thing, thinking that they're doing better when they're really just shooting themselves in the foot. So that's what your comments make me think of, and I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and there's two things, and one of them we hear a lot about, and one we don't hear much about, right? There's ROI, which everybody talks about, not everybody, but we hear about, right? It's what's your return on investment? What's your return on investment? But the thing people don't think about is ROE, which is return on energy.
So what does that mean exactly? Yeah.
Well, it may sound a little bit bizarre, but to think about what's the return on the investment that you make of your time, right? So how much time do you spend on Facebook or you and I just aged ourselves with the forums or whatever. How much time and energy, how much of you are you expending to do things that's like this fight, or that is the example you gave, right? I'm gonna go out and spend an hour of my time on Facebook figuring out which one of these is, quote, the best, right? And I'm putting that in quotes because what's best for you isn't necessarily what's best for me, because our client base is different, where we are in our business is different, our marketing messages are different, how often we use something is different. So there are a lot of parameters. And we've gotten into this system where people think everything should be cookie cutter. What's the best for this? What's the cheapest this? It's not about that. It's about the question. You're asking the wrong question. It's not what's the best. It's what's the best for me. And so many of the people, I'm not going to, you pick coaches, internet marketers, whatever, we sort of fall into that, and we start teaching into those areas instead of saying, wait a minute, let's really give this person the answer they deserve. And we don't do that by just regurgitating an answer. We do that by what I call a consultative discussion with them, where we're asking questions to find out, and then saying, okay, well, based on my experience and the things that you just said to me, here's what you should really look at doing or using, and here's why, right? Instead of just regurgitating the fastest answer that comes up. So the ROE is what's the return on your energy. So I invested an hour of my energetic time. I didn't necessarily put real money down, right? But I did, because an hour of my time is worth, you pick the number, right? $100 an hour, $50 an hour, $1,000 an hour, whatever your number is. So did you receive what you wanted in that hour for the energy that you expended? Because you didn't throw down the $100 bill, right? But you did invest the energy that really did cost you that same $100.
Right. That's an interesting way of looking at it. That you can always make more money, but once that hour's gone, I mean, you're not going to get that time back. And so, I mean, why do you think that is? Why do you think we fall into that trap? Do you think maybe it's like a low self-esteem issue, and we don't think that our 1 hour is worth it, or do you think that maybe people aren't aware of the time that they're wasting, or why do you think this thing even happens?
I think because people don't think of it that way, right? You don't until somebody brings it to your attention. Nobody says to you, hey, what's an hour of your time worth? Right? When you ask people that question, you always get this kind of funny look, or if you're on the phone, there's always sort of this pregnant pause, right? And they're like, well, what do you mean? Well, what's an hour of your time worth, right? So it's the same response to, do you clean your own house, right? Do you mow your own lawn? And people say, well, sure. Well, what would you pay somebody to clean your house, right? So I live in a 2,200 square foot house. It costs me $80 to have somebody clean my house, whether I do it twice a week or once a month or however often, right? So what could I be doing in my business in that, let's say it's an hour. In my case, it takes them about 2 hours, right? So 2 hours, that's $40 an hour. What could I be doing in that 2 hour span that I would be investing cleaning my house, that if I could invest that 2 hours in my business, can I get that $80 back plus some? If the answer is yes, then I should be having somebody else clean my house. So that's just an example, right? So let's use that in business. It's the same thing, Robert. Well, I'm writing. What are you doing? Well, I'm writing emails. Okay. Well, what would it cost you to have somebody write those emails for you? Let's say it's $100. And how much time would that save? Let's say it's an hour. Again, can I make that $100 back plus, or at least break even? Because you can run on break even for a little while if you have a back end in your business, right? People don't think like that. People look and say, well, I have to put $80 out, or I have to put $100 out to have that done. But what's it costing you not to be doing that? Probably way more than the $80. But we haven't been trained to think like that, because most of us were raised in what I call more of a dollars per hour mentality, right? We weren't raised in that entrepreneurial or that business mode where we say, well, what is my time worth? Because, I sit behind my computer, I go network, or I do whatever it is I do to help build my business every day. But I don't think about the value of my time.
Right. I love that. And so what it sounds like is it's a mindset thing. It sounds like it's the tendency that dollars for hours mindset is more of like a scarcity of worrying about lack of I have to hold on to my precious money, as opposed to the more abundance entrepreneurial mindset where you're like, well, I'm gonna pay that money, and then now that frees up time for me, now I can go have more time to make even more money.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is. I often tell people, as much as I hope I teach people things, my goal is never to teach somebody anything new. My goal is always to make them think differently. And so this is one of those topics, right? If you think differently about it, and I've talked to a lot of people, and I've started to talk about this more and more in my own business, is if you will take the position of being, we talk about mindfulness in the world, but nobody that I know of is bringing it back into the business, right? If you can be mindful in your business every single day, and if you can be mindful in what you're doing in this moment, right, which is the only real time that we have, not to get esoterical or woo-woo or whatever the word is, right, or metaphysical or any of that, but if you can stay in this moment and really think about, okay, what is it that I'm doing, and am I looking, what is the goal, right? The other piece of this is that people don't start with the end in mind. We sit down at our desk every day and we go, okay, I don't know what to do. Well, you don't know what to do because you don't have a plan. And I'm not talking about some big elaborate plan, but what are you doing in the next 30, 60, 90 days that you need to be working on right now? And if you backward plan everything that you do, in other words, start from the date of whenever it is, whether it's an event or a teleseminar or a webinar or a promotion, or you're launching something new, and plan everything back, then every day when you go sit down at your computer or walk into your office, you, as well as your team, will know exactly what you need to do because you know what's coming up. The problem is that if you don't have that plan, or if the plan is so far out that there's no urgency to do it, we sit around and twiddle our thumbs.
Right. That's huge right there. Yeah. It sounds like, so it comes down to a lot of business owners out there don't really treat it like a business. They treat it more like a hobby. And I can definitely relate to some of the things you're saying. And I feel like once again, going back to those first handful of years in business, or years doing this internet marketing thing, those first couple of years, I told myself, oh, I'm just going to live the entrepreneur lifestyle. I'm just going to kind of sit back and work when I want and do what I want. And back then I was definitely kidding myself, because then those times that I actually, like you mentioned there, when I actually had a plan, I have deadlines, I had urgency, there was maybe a little bit of stress or a little bit of putting the pedal to the metal, but then guess what? That actually led to not only making money, but making money consistently, and having all these things in place, and having money left over to put back in the business, to have traffic, to delegate all those things. But it was definitely a little bit of a leap of faith, and I had to redo my thinking, and in terms of having that urgency, having those deadlines, and their self-imposed deadlines, but it's still added stress, but it turned out in the long run to be good stress.
Yeah, so many people, Robert, have bought into it. And look, don't get me wrong here. I love owning my own business. I love being an entrepreneur. I love being in control of my own schedule and all of that, right? I love all of that. But part of the problem with this whole thing is that people have bought into, I'm not even going to call it the dream, because it's not the dream. People have bought into this illusion that there's some magic that if I start my own business, right, that I just have to put put a website up or hang my shingle, if you will, right? That's old school. But that magically by starting a business, I all of a sudden don't really have to work, and I can sit around and watch TV and eat bonbons all day or vacation all the time. And then the bottom line is what you see on Facebook,
Good one.
right?
Yeah.
It's not the reality of what's happening in people's lives and in their business. They're showing you the best of what they have. There's a quote that I love, and it says, "Stop comparing your behind the scenes reel to everyone else's highlight reel." Right? In other words, you know what's going on behind the scenes in your business, and you're running, like a hamster on a wheel, and you're stressed out and you're doing all these things. And, sometimes you have more month than you have money, and you look at everyone else and you think, oh my gosh, their life is perfect. And they're traveling and they're doing all these things, and they're so much money. First of all, they probably are doing the same things you're doing and they're probably as stressed out as you are. And if they're not, then you should probably learn from them. But we all show, we want people to, it's the illusion, right? How many people just say, I just wrote an email, a blog post a week ago and said, you know what, this has been a really crappy year for me. And let me just tell you, I was just real with people. And I think when you get to that point and you can say, wait a minute, right? I'm comparing everybody else's highlight reel to my everyday life instead of one reality to the next. And it's easy to get caught up in, again, what I call the illusion of, geez, I'm making $1 million. Well, guess what? You didn't make $1 million overnight. That you didn't see that guy or that gal struggle for the last 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it is. All of a sudden, they're an instant millionaire. They're not. Right? So it's that illusion piece that we get so enamored with in our lives and in our business, and we sort of let it, take us away, and we forget that, what? Nobody got to a 6-figure business or a 7-figure business or beyond without doing some hard work.
Right. I agree that's huge. And also, if we try to follow too much into that trap of comparing their highlight reel to our behind the scenes, then if we try to copy those things, we'll be copying or emulating or taking the wrong actions because we're basing it off incorrect information.
Absolutely. And so, that's a great point that, we all want to model and emulate what the successful people are doing. My caution to you is make sure they really are as successful as you think they are, right? So look at people who've been around for a lot of years. I thought this was really a great, somebody said this the other day, that if somebody hasn't taken at least 2 hits and gotten back up, you don't want to coach with them. And I thought that was really interesting because, if you look at some of the big names people, even in the internet marketing space, and I'll just use, look at Russell Brunson, he's rebuilt himself a couple of times. That's the guy I want to learn from because he has figured it out. He has longevity, which means he's done some things. I had somebody in a Facebook group make some comment the other day that they would never listen to somebody who'd been in business longer than 5 years. And I thought to myself, wow, you really don't get it. Those are the exact people you should be listening to because they're still around. They have longevity. They've taken their hits and come, and managed to keep their head above water. And so I think it's a really good point from that perspective.
Yeah, I think so. And I like Russell too. And I like how he's reinvented himself a few times after a bunch of things crashed and burned. And I also like those marketers out there who have that sort of mix of, well, they have the persistence. So they figured out when, either the economy itself took a downturn or when it seems like there was a period of time in there when the economy itself was doing great, but then at least in the internet marketing space, some of these things crashed and burned too. So there's that persistence in figuring out the path to get back on top. And then also, and with Russell in particular, like the sort of the taking the risk and having the leverage and building the team as opposed to just playing it safe. I love it. So it feels like in our conversation so far, we've kind of just like listed like a few really good qualities that people need to be paying attention to, so that way they're kind of, I guess, optimized for what it is they need to do. So far you mentioned number one, to value what an hour is and look for that return on energy, not just the so-called return on investment. And if we know what an hour of our time was worth, then we can maybe approach more logically what we want to delegate, as opposed to trying to be a perfectionist and do everything ourselves. And also, number two, you mentioned about being mindful in your business and staying in this moment and knowing what the goal is, but not just some vague goal. Start with the end in mind, backtrack, and that way you know what you need to do right now, today, or what your team needs to do, and that way you have the deadline, the urgency. And then number three, really important point for people to keep in mind is to avoid that trap, or maybe get ourselves out of that trap of comparing someone else's highlight reel where you see all the best stuff, and of course they're not going to show you the bad stuff, so what you see is not 100% accurate. So don't compare that to your day-to-day struggle. So lots of great stuff so far. And so we've talked about like a lot of things not to do, or a lot of great ways to be thinking. And so once we have our head on straight, so to speak, I know that you said that it's not a one size fits all. People need to do like what's best for them, but what actions should we begin taking to maybe have a real business going, as opposed to just farting around or just showing off?
Well, I'm going to give you two things, and it's going to sound really basic. But the first one is, I say this a lot, and actually somebody quoted me on this. I saw this just the other day, so it kind of reminded me. Sit your butt in the chair and work. That's the first thing, right? Don't get distracted, right? Because especially if you work from home. Oh, well, look, there's some dust over there. Let me go dust. No, pick your hours. And look, the flexibility is great, right? But pretty much from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock, I'm around my desk. Now, today, when we finish this, I'm going to go run an errand because I have the flexibility to do that, which means I might put in a couple hours on the weekends, to make up for, the things I didn't get done this afternoon that I need to do for a client. But I have the flexibility. But we get enamored with the flexibility, and pretty soon we're not being productive, right? So sit your butt in the chair for whatever hours you want to do that, and really work. Really, really work during that time. The second thing I'm going to say is, at the end of every day, I want you to think about what are the things that you have completed. What did you actually get done and accomplished on that particular day, right? So I have a journal. And before I get up from my desk at the end of the day, I actually write in that journal. Sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's three, sometimes it might be 5 or 10. What did I actually accomplish today? What did I get completed today? And the third thing that I'm going to say is, give yourself time to think. I mean, really think in your business. Think about what you're doing, where you're going, what your goal is. Again, not for the end of the year, but where are you headed, right? How do you get more focused? But we don't. So many of us are on what I call remote control. We just go and we do that. We've forgotten to be leaders in our own lives and in our own business, and that requires you to think. Some people will call it working on your business instead of in your business. I think it's even beyond that, right? Take the time to think about, mind map, make a list, whatever it is that you need to do, but really think about what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it. And the answer to that question, if the answer to that question is ever because so-and-so told me to, that's not strategy. You've got to have strategy in your business. And it needs to. So if you ever hear yourself say that, I want you to really stop and say, uh-oh, Diane said that should be a problem. What's the strategy? Why are you doing what it is that you're doing? And is it getting you where you want to be, instead of being in the rut of, I'm doing the same thing over and over again? What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? So those would be the three things that I would say.
So super great. So just to recap, number one, put your butt in the chair and work. Number two, at the end of the day, write in that journal and list off things you completed. That way you have that barometer, so to speak. And then number three, have that time to think. So that way you're not just doing the mindless tasks. That way you know why you're doing things, and you know if you're getting the results that you want out of it. And I completely agree on all counts, because I know that, again, those first few years of internet marketing, I was really happy-go-lucky with that spiral bound notebook. I would draw out these huge big plans on the spiral bound notebook, but then I didn't have anything in place to implement. I didn't have either a team or I wasn't willing to do the work myself. And so I'd do a little bit of dabbling, and then I'd go back to the notebook and turn the page and draw some more grand plans. And then there was definitely also a period of time when I was just caught up in the minutia. I was just caught up in playing around with this website or the sales letter, and that was the other extreme, probably, right? It was going
Yep.
all the way from the boss to the worker, and like, there's things like E-Myth where they talk about there's the CEO, and then there's the worker on the other end of things, and in the middle there's the manager. And if we're running our own business, maybe we sometimes need to switch gears or know if there's too much of the drawing the diagrams happening or too much of the working happening. Maybe we need to readjust. And so lots of great stuff so far. And I want to make sure that as we're beginning to wind down our conversation here, that people know, okay, I heard Diane's advice. This all sounds great. She's pointed out things that maybe I forgot to do or hadn't even considered, or things that now that she put it into words now it makes sense and I know what I need to do. So can you tell us about like your website or your offers, or just things people need to know about right now today that they should go and grab to make their business the best it can be?
Sure. I've got all kinds of free things on my website. That's probably the best place to go, and that's at just completemarketingsystems.com. That's the website, and you can reach me. There's all kinds of ways to reach me there. There's a 866 toll-free number. There's the emails on there, but completemarketingsystems.com. There's 4 or 5 different freebie things on there you can get from me. And I just want to point out, Robert, the key word that you said in the last thing that you said is implementation, right? That's so many people. That's where we sort of fall back, right? Is we don't implement and execute. And that's really the get stuff done, right? GSDF, get stuff done fast. That's really where the get stuff done comes in, right? Is in the implementation and the execution. And as you grow your business, more and more of those things can be delegated. But sometimes you just have to get your hands dirty and get your feet a little muddy and get in there and get things implemented and executed. Because when things get done, that's when you start to build that lifestyle. That's when you start to be able to take Fridays off or take those 2-week vacations and know that you now own a business instead of owning a job, which is really what everybody wants.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get the machine rocking and rolling. You got to get some momentum, and you might have those few years where you maybe push yourself more than you thought you had to. But then once you get that going, then now you have options, and now you can choose what you want to back off on. And what's that quote? Like something like, some people like they don't want to do the work, but if you do the work that people don't want to do, then at a certain point you can live the lifestyle that most people can't live. So this is great stuff. And so when people go to your website, which once again for everyone listening, completemarketingsystems.com, and you say there are freebies there, is there a particular favorite, or is there one that you recommend people go and grab there?
The big one, which will be on the main site that you'll see, is how to start, build, and grow your information marketing business. That's kind of my flagship thing. And then inside the site, there's some things on direct mail and some different things. But probably the best one is the one that's on the main site there, which is how to start, build, and grow that business. 9 key building blocks.
All right, sounds fantastic. And if you're listening to Diane right now, which you are, you're probably picking up on Diane doesn't sugarcoat things, right? She tells it like it is, as opposed to someone else might have some kind of freebie out there that kind of has fluff or stuff that's regurgitated. I mean, Diane knows her stuff, so make sure you go and claim that freebie on how to start, build, and grow that info marketing business at completemarketingsystems.com. And you also mentioned that you have that phone number and that email there. So if someone wants to reach out to you to maybe like get some coaching, or just kind of see if you and them can work together, what's the ideal person that you're looking for to go and reach out to you? Like what would you wish people would reach out and ask you about or tell you about?
You kind of asked me 2 different things, but let me tell you. So sort of my ideal client is somebody who, it's really more about your attitude, right? If you understand that you're in a place in your business where it's time to grow and get things done, and you maybe are that person who says, well, I've tried some coaching before, I've tried some things before, and it hasn't quite worked out. Everything that I do is individualized and customized. So there's no cookie cutter with me, but my sort of ideal person is the person who has who understands that they're going to have to make an investment, and that then if you just will go do the work, if you'll just go do the things and implement the things, and I'm the person that I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm going to give you my opinion, as you said, Robert. It's kind of direct and to the point. But the bottom line is that it's your business, and so if you ever work with somebody who says, well, this is what you should do, and there's no flexibility, I always tell people to run, because it's your business. And so if I give you advice and you say, well, I appreciate that, Diane, and I hear you, I understand it, and I still want to do this, then I'll say to you, fine, and let's try it. Let's jump in, and I'll give you the best advice and help you in any way that I can with that, knowing full. And sometimes, quite honestly, Robert, sometimes I'm not right. Sometimes it works better than I think. So, but there are typically reasons, and I always give the reasons for that. So I'm really looking for somebody who has that attitude. If you want to play and you're a hobbyist, I'm not the person for you, and you're not the person for me. But if you're somebody who's looking to really grow their business and take it to the next level, or if you have my other ideal client is somebody who already owns a business that's looking to start an information side of their business. Those are sort of my two really big kind of sweet spots.
Okay, great, super fantastic, and yeah, and I completely agree, and that sort of takes it full circle back around that the problem a lot of people fall into when they ask for advice, because sometimes you ask for advice and the answer is really vague, like, well, what's the best landing page builder? And then it's like, well, whatever worked for you. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that doesn't really give me a starting point. And then if they say, well, here's this one, it has to be this one, and it's like, okay, well, again, why is it that one? Is that the only answer in the world? And then also the other wrong thing that I hear a lot is, well, here's 5 choices, right? Here's 5, you could host your site on ClickFunnels or Thinkific or Wix, or host it yourself. And I'm like, okay, well, now I have to research 5 different things, but I like your solution the best, where instead of saying nothing, instead of saying one, instead of saying many, you ask a couple of probing questions, and then based on those answers, you give that customized response. So that way you have the best of both worlds. It's not 0, it's not 1, it's not a billion, it's the exact one that you need. So if you out there listening if you out there listening and maybe reading the transcript or something, if you have found yourself falling into this trap of you either get overloaded or it's not enough, or you're just falling into all these problems that all of us entrepreneurs have, well, maybe the answer is that you need a coach, you need a guide, you need someone where you can ask those questions, or they can ask questions of you, and then get the advice that you need to get, and avoid that cookie cutter problem. So if you've had these problems in the past, right? Been burned in the past, or didn't like coaching in the past, or didn't like certain marketing methods in the past, well, maybe that was the journey that you had to be on to be perfectly prepared to reach out to Diane today. Don't wait, do it today. Reach out to Diane today by going to CompleteMarketingSystems.com. And if you own a business and you want to build the info side, or you realize that it's time to grow, you have a great attitude already, but you need to be guided in the right direction, then Diane is your person. So CompleteMarketingSystems.com. We'll see you there. And thanks so much, Diane, for hopping on the show, being real with us, being honest, and telling us those things that we need to know, the foundation of our entrepreneurial mindset, basically, right?
Yep. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure when somebody allows you access to their group and to their clan. So I take that responsibility very seriously, and I appreciate the time.
Want to listen to more fantastic marketers of the day? Subscribe to us at marketeroftheday.com/iTunes and browse past episodes at marketeroftheday.com.